All right. Am I? Oh, right. Welcome to the March 14th school board meeting. I'll call us to order. We can start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag. We'll move to the acknowledgement of tribal land. Wonderful. Now we'll move to approval of the agenda. Superintendent, are there any changes?
Thank you, Board President Anderson. I would like to make one change under action. Item B, acceptance of the FY23 financial audit to be moved before public forum.
Okay, great. We can do that. Is there a motion?
President Anderson,
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
move to approve the agenda with the change that the superintendent noted.
Excellent.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Great. Thank you so much. And now we move on to number 2. Is there a motion?
I move that we move into executive session where we will be discussing threatened or pending litigation, sorry.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we will move into executive session.
I am suffering.
My phone, I did plug it in.
Are you even working?
I was like, thank God Simon left his charger in the office, because otherwise I would definitely just have to find a penalty in 2 seconds.
Neil, good morning. Okay. Yeah, we got everything going. They have me on working the clicker right now, and they just went into executive session. Now I'm just helping Alma, her pregnant family, working with some. I'd say they left maybe about 8 minutes ago. Yeah. Yes. No, okay. Are you welcome? Okay, bye.
Go back to my car and get my water. What's executive today? Why didn't you have I didn't even catch that there was executive.
Yeah.
I just asked Alma, is there any change to executive? I said, am I supposed to be executive?
I don't know what it is.
No, my head is just spinning. Sometimes I can't even keep going. I just have to
I know. I feel like I'm getting a call.
I don't even really like to share them. That sounds like a good idea too.
Yeah.
Hello? This is she. I'll have to do this all another time. Thanks, so. Hello? This is she. Oh, I'm fine, thank you. I'm going to send you a note. I'll call me at another time. Sometime tomorrow during business hours, 8 and 4, I guess. Okay, all right, bye.
Oh, it was painful.
Really? For some reason, I pictured you there in, last time Larry and I sat on the car, I think it was 2020, like, I remember Veronica calling me when I was driving to the game and saying, so that was the last time I sat on the floor there watching them play. Weren't you there that year? You're the same town, well, it was a day game, I can remember that one too. During the day. Yep, I remember that one too. A lot of paper for a non-paper meeting.
I know. Look how. I think we're live, right?
I called the schools today to see if they had any sense. Forum, what the questions they had, because I was concerned because I was going to talk and then put in that presentation and I was going to answer the question that would then, you know.
Why wouldn't I? I've got stuff on the. Oh. I went on for like 6 months. Well,
That was awful. And I know that when it's program and department, oh, it's really very personal, very, but like it was like, as well as personal for it. It was awful. And like students and like they're all been on for that sole purpose, and so like okay, well on dance for like the ones inside and the people on the outside. Yeah, this thing has a good thing. Hey, where's the picture of the baby?
Huh?
The baby? Where's the pictures of the baby?
Oh, I'll bring my phone down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you didn't bring her, or what? Like,
Well, she had an appointment today, so we.
congrats, Dad. You guys all alive and well?
I've been exhausted. Mary was like, you do. I'm tired and I've been working like almost every day, but just an adjustment. She was kind of suffering the first 2 weeks.
Really?
Because she was eating around the clock and she was crying and I'm like, so one day.
Oh, yeah, it's a mess.
I'll hold her, just one night holding her. She's crying and I'm changing her.
So has she settled down now?
Oh, yeah.
Now that the money's in, and she's actually,
Yeah.
she's probably just starving, she probably arrived in the world starving.
She
And there was really no sustenance, so I'm probably great, that's probably what it was.
You can leave them both there.
Huh?
and then
You know, I
today
don't
her-
sit
I'm trying to get out of
I
here.
know, I know, I
today her appointment, she was already
Yeah, that's usually where you sit, right?
They're not.
She arrived in the world starving.
No.
so, but now
So I
she's
booked Michael.
now she's super lost some sleep. So
Yeah, you can leave it here and then, I just don't remember.
she watches me like
That's why I was thinking I'm looking for it.
I'll be holding her and she just stares at me. So, yeah. And then in the morning, whenever that's when my wife listens to her, she lays her down next to me.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's better now for sure.
The first few days, but
We took her to the newborn pictures the day of All Stars, right? And I expected to be at All Stars, you know.
okay, well,
Well, she's wide awake. The day she was born, they said, she was not she was up all day, all night.
it's like that apartment from the
Yeah.
first side.
And my wife works nights, so I think she's like on that schedule. Like being up at night and sleeping during the day. So yeah, now she's expected me so that he's been.
I was gonna say, how's she doing?
Yeah, you know, we were worried because he was not coming yet. But we let him know Martin whenever she cries he comes over. Well, he's kind of a little rough, you know, when she spits her pacifier out. And the other day he was like holding her head trying to shove it. And I'm like, he's trying to take food with her. He threw his blanket on her head. Like she was like completely covered in it. So, but whenever we change her, we're like, oh, we're gonna go. You know, we're gonna go her and he's helpful.
How is she doing? Are you guys taking turns being alone? The two of them? Because you're only a week in here. No, I could. Okay. But I was on this.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll call you after this.
This will probably be how do we go to this one? This last one. So this will probably this has everything. Oh, we did that.
Yeah, we did the budget.
So we're actually, I know we already tried to get that one. Should we do this? No, they'll come. So we're actually, right? This is just shorter plan. Should I open it first? Google Slides? Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You said 4:15, 5:15, and it's on the dot.
Okay.
How you doing? Come on, guys. We got yours, Robert.
This is the governance, right? Results of audit presentation of governance. That's the audit presentation. The other one is RBC.
Did our meeting go?
I mean, I don't think people understand what it's about. You know what I mean? So they kind of becomes fun. So that's the audit. You know what I mean? Because on that day, I went out there, I get them going, I was talking, I'll look over at them, and then they're like, okay. Yeah. I was shocked at how much they were talking. I kept looking at them. I'm not gonna talk this whole meeting. Yeah, I'm not. Josh talked. We just wanna have meetings like that here. Just like your entire team. Yeah.
All you have to do is just go into the slides.
Yeah, that's what Tom had asked us, like, can I still have those meetings? Like, no, I'm gonna have a 6-week meetings that we used to have when you were here, but that would be great, you know? But instead of saying we don't have meetings, you know, we got birthdays, cupcakes and things like that, we use that time to say a few things and, eat some good sugar. Yeah. So, that's good.
That's like, yeah, those are, yeah. So usually.
Yeah.
Unavailable lately is what they told me. We have this all set up pretty good. We have an account in classroom. We have an AP account called board secretary, board secretary. And so anyone who needs to, you know, present,
Yes.
or there is a specific to the board secretary, log in. And we can do it under the
Okay.
Google Drive. You can share
So this is
Google
okay.
Drive, or you can just go to your email and open it up. We just have one account that runs everything. Yeah.
But see the screen, I like
I didn't think they were gonna do it.
And the thing is that you have a new account. Well, actually, how do we show PDF with the slides instead of the way that the other thing that Larry was showing was
let's just.
Oh, he's already.
If you like, I can,
Like, see how Robert said we can just do.
What if you do plus?
it's not the full version of Adobe, this is just using Adobe. Don't open up it. So,
Down the bottom right.
is there a plus? There's a plus in the bottom right. Go over to the right.
Good, there you go. Right there. Yeah. There you go. That was
Good.
good before?
Yeah.
Do one more.
One more.
Yeah, that's even better. The only thing you have to worry about is you see the basketball stuff. Bottom, yeah. But you're not cutting it. I mean, Saturday lots is big.
Maybe I'll go down one.
Yeah.
I think that's better, don't you? Is that visible enough, or is that too small?
Do one more. Do the plus.
One more plus.
Yeah, and then slide to the right to see if it's actually cutting deep. See, it's cutting a tiny bit off.
I mean,
I think go down.
go down.
Yeah. Started that pushing.
Okay, so now we have Robert's two.
3 weeks? I was
No, she's not even 2 weeks yet. My son was born in Korea. All our country was born in June. No, that was like after the pandemic started.
Yeah.
But at first, the first couple of days were chaotic. I was like, what did you do? But my son, he's done such a good job. Yeah, he works so hard about it. He was in denial for quite some time. Yeah. We were
That's cool.
yeah. What we're gonna do is first 15 minutes. Did you?
How's it going?
Going good, how are you?
It's your first time up here? That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So that's our plan of it. Alright, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. You're it.
Happy. Are we out?
You think parents gonna come? I feel like she has to be coming. That's really good. Are you seeing there? I like. Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen her. Doing good.
Cody.
Nice to meet you. I'm Ivy. I'm Lucas.
And there's
Cody.
so there's Well, Kathy's already there. That's what it's Let's move
But I
Kathy.
know that our board members have to have paper copies.
Is that what you're saying?
If everything is there.
Yeah.
So, can I work
Well, one time,
I don't have a packet there. It would be like the same thing that everything that's on there.
it's probably fine. Like Lucas and I normally just keep notes across stuff all through. So I don't think that's big party having all the bills printed out because they show it annually projected. So I think it's probably fine. Or maybe if all of the student board members can share.
Okay, so I can do one packet
I
then?
think that'd be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
I like having some extra paper, but.
Okay, sounds good. Let me go ahead and do that then. Thanks.
Yeah. How have you been? We haven't seen you in so long. Oh. Good, good. It's been slow. We haven't been called out. Yeah. That's the photo.
Good, how are you?
Quarter. Yeah, that's the worst part. That's the worst part. Shit, it's tomorrow. No. This is the game. Oh. So they're gonna do the procedural stuff. And they're gonna what is this? It's an executive session. That's what we're doing. Without phone. Probably not. We start like 6 minutes. I've been waiting, you know. I feel like it's too long. I know. The worst part is when I go forward with that energy.
Are you gonna drive? I know. I had a couple people. We had a couple people show up like last Tuesday. Everybody has. You're gonna drive, right? Yeah. I drive or take the bus. Yeah, and talk just a bit. Let you know because if not, we have to solve it. It should be good. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right, you missed. How did your okay? Oh, yeah. Didn't keep that gauze in there. All the next not about to come though. Today, no, do that. Yeah, it's just that executive session. Did they already do that? No, they usually have them before. That's why the agenda. Yeah. So that's what they do. Yeah, probably. Wasn't the meeting start at 5:30? Right. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, I just worked through everything. Yeah. Good. How are you, Dr. Gonzalez?
Good.
Hello.
I just praised you at Santa Fe High.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I was there for a meeting.
Oh, gotcha.
We've got a great school board member. I was amazed that EJ teachers were not upset. And I went to the PTA and they were not, I mean, understanding that they're picking up this whole school and moving it together. I think made a big difference for them. They thought maybe that'd be all separated or the school was going to be closed. But well, when I first got on the school board, then I guess that was what was going on here. Because Seika Madre, before I even got, sworn in, I said, please, they met with me, please don't close the school. And EJ met with me. So I guess it was on all their minds that we were going to close schools.
Good. Well, because Maureen brought a resolution to close EJ, Nova, and Seika. And that was in her last 2 months as a school board.
Went and did this in my mouth, and I have to get us out of executive session.
Okay, we are all here. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move that we come out of executive session where we discussed threatened or pending litigation.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
And no action was taken.
Oh, do we?
No,
Oh,
and
yeah.
no action was taken.
Thank you. Second. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or otherwise? Great. We will move to introduction of the interpreter. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Anderson. Making the introduction tonight is Deputy Superintendent Romero.
Para asistencia de traducción en español, el señor Huerta te ayudará. Gracias.
Thank you.
We've amended the agenda, so we have one item before public forum.
So we will move to, per our amended agenda, we'll move to acceptance of FY23 financial audit. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Anderson, members of the board, those in the audience. Taking us through our audit is Mr. Robert Martinez, our CFO. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Superintendent Chavez. Madam President, members of the board, student board members, tonight it's the other presentation. I'm going to bring up Scott Eliason with Jaramillo Accounting Group to walk us through the FY23 audit. He's going to be sharing some of the main points of the audit in this presentation. So Scott, if you'll come up here and join me.
Thanks, Robert. Good evening, board, Madam President, Superintendent. I'm here tonight to go through the results of the audit. And the audit was for the year ended June 30th, 2023. And the state audit rule requires that after the audit report has been reviewed and released by the state auditor, that the auditor and the audit firm come to governance and present the results of the audit. And so that's what I'm here to do tonight. Got a just a quick PowerPoint that covers our required communication, not only under the professional audit standards, but the also the state audit rule. Doesn't look like that one quite comes up on the PDF, so I'll jump to the next one. So let's just talk about the audit itself, the scope of the audit, and everybody, I believe, got a copy of the audit report that's on the board, and it's a very lengthy report, covers well over 100 pages. And so the scope of the audit, of course, covers that. It covers the district itself, It also covers the administratively attached, what we call a component unit, which is ATC. And so ATC is contained within these financial statements. Also, they cover probably 40 pages of the 170 or so pages of the audit report. The audit itself has lots of funds in here, like the general fund and all kinds of state funds and federal funds. Everything, virtually, it seems like every revenue sort of source, major revenue source, is tracked, has a separate fund. So that's why Robert and his crew, spend a lot of time during the year reconciling these funds out and making sure they're presented properly so that they're ready at the end of the year for the audit. So as far as the scope goes, we look at what's called the GASBs. Those are the standards under the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. We look at the internal control structure. We spend a lot of time actually with the internal control structure. We look at everything from activity fund cash receipts to operating disbursements, of course, payroll being the most substantial dollar amount. We look at that transaction cycle, the internal control structure. We test it. We look at all kinds of various risks to the entity, which ultimately sort of shake that all up, put it in the funnel here, and it results in our audit risks and our audit approach that we take. And at the end of the day, the auditing, we don't look at every single number. There's a million different numbers in here. We ultimately look at, the process we go through to ensure that we have sufficient audit evidence is to do a lot of sampling of the different transaction cycles and of the different funds. We scope and look at certain size transactions. We confirm directly balances. So like all the different bank accounts, we'll confirm those directly with the bank. That's the best evidence, is to go to the direct source of the information. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're required to report to governance that the audit is not designed to detect fraud. However, if during the course of the testing we see any fraud risk factors, we do certainly follow up on those. And so we're required to talk about the timing of the audit also. And we started the audit process in June. So if you think it's March, June will be here soon enough and another audit will be started. Start with the planning process. That moves into, updating documentation of the internal control structure and testing of the control structure and compliance testing. And when we say compliance testing, that covers a lot of different areas. We look at compliance under the state audit rule. We look at compliance with the federal programs. So every year there's going to be different federal programs that get rotated in and out of the testing process. So the state audit rule, for example, has required test of payroll, retired test of how the payments are being made by the district to the Educational Retirement Board, through to the Retiree Healthcare Authority. Procurement, we spend a lot of time. Procurement's obviously a big area to look at. So we do a lot of testing of procurement, just a whole number of different tests. And if they're in the School Personnel Act, of course, and if there's any audit findings, we're required to report on those. You see up there, it says UGG testing, that's Uniform Grant Guidance Testing. Every year, federal programs get rotated in and out. And then, of course, the account balance testing, we do that after the books are closed and everything. Then Robert and his department put together all kinds of different schedules for us to test and pull the information. We start testing, looks like this last year, October to early November. And then ultimately the financial statements to the state auditor's office. School districts have a deadline of November 15th. So we presented those a couple of days before the deadline. And then the state auditor takes these financial statements, which again, 170 or so pages here. They go through and do a desk review, a checklist to make sure that from their perspective, everything has been disclosed, any audit findings. If they think we need to do additional work or they don't like the finding as written, we'll work with them on that. And so ultimately, the report gets released. I think it was released a couple of weeks ago. So here we are. And another item that we're required to talk about is that we're independent of the district. And by independent means that we don't have any relationships, familial relationships, or any other type of relationship. Next slide. We're required to talk about the audit opinions, and in this report, there's actually 3 individual reports that have our signature on. That would be the first report, which is the audit report, audit of the financial statements, and also compliance and other matters. That report, we are happy to report that we issue an unmodified or clean opinion on that. The second report in here is the report on the federal programs. Again, unmodified or clean opinion on that. And then the last report is under generally accepted government auditing standards. That's a 2-part report, first part on internal control and the second part on compliance and other matters. That report, if there's any findings that we're required to report on, they're referred to in there. And so the next area to talk about is audit findings. A couple of audit findings in the prior year. I believe those were by and large repeated. Those findings being repeated, they are of lesser a lesser amount on those findings. So they're not as severe as the previous year. Some progress has been made on those. In the current year, of those 4, we see that there's 5. So there's 1 new, 2 are financial statement related, and 3 are compliance related. And so we're required to go to the financial statements themselves and just briefly discuss each of those audit findings. So if anybody has their financial statements, they can follow along on page 127. That briefly describes the findings. First one on internal control over financial close and reporting. That finding relates to the district not doing their own financial statements. The audit committee has requested in the past that the district prepare their own financial statements. Of course, they can contract it out, which they contracted the accounting firm to prepare their financial statements, all from their books and records. That's just something that a district probably this size should move towards, is preparing their own financial statements in their entirety. So that's presented as something that needs to be brought to the board's attention. And I would say every year there has been improvement as far as the progress to ultimately resolving this finding. So in the past, the district didn't even really prepare the schedules we needed to compile the information in perfect format. Over the last 3 or 4 years, that's been a real improvement. So I think they're probably at the point where they can prepare their own financial statements to fulfill the audit committee's request. And the second finding has to do with negative cash balances in the activity funds, which arose some number of years ago because of poor budgetary controls. That has since been enhanced by having adequate budgetary controls on those funds. But they are negative. Those negative balances and the number of funds with negative balances has reduced each year. I would suspect by next year that this finding will probably be moved to the very back as a much lesser finding. The third finding has to do with budgets to actual. State statute requires that you go through and budget not only each individual fund, but within each individual fund, each major functional category, and any amounts that are overspent within those categories are required to be presented as a finding because it's a non-compliance with state statute. The next audit finding has to do with looks like collateral, and that one was related to a bank account that was under collateralized. That's a really easy finding to get resolved in this next year. And then the last finding has to do with the School Personnel Act, and there's a few areas there that we tested that it appeared that the district was out of compliance. I think in some cases, honestly, that that the records may have been there. They just were not able to find the records. And in other cases, the district did assert to us that there was a few areas like training that they needed to do a better job on ensuring that all those trainings happen for the new staff. So those are the findings that we're required to talk about. They're all in the financial statements. I know that management has responded to each of these findings. Management has agreed with each of these findings, and management is working with a plan to ensure that they get resolved in the future. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that, Robert?
No, thank you, Scott. I mean, the one thing I will say is the district, as Scott mentioned, has made significant progress on the audit year after year. I know that when I began here, there were over 20 audit findings. So, being down to, 5, today we've just continued to make progress, and we're continuing to make progress. And some audit findings can take years to resolve. Some of them can be resolved within a year. So we're working on those with our bank, like he said, pledge collateral. That was a new audit finding for us that other districts that also use the same bank also did get the same finding. So we may have to move bank accounts. But those are some conversations that we're having right now with the bank to see if that, they can be resolved. And if not, then we know what our next steps are. But the district has just continuously made significant progress. As Scott said, the audit committee has asked for us to do our own financial statements. For the last 6 years, we have not been fully staffed. We have not had staff that has stayed. So once you invest in training staff and then they leave, we're just trying to fill a hole to continue getting those schedules and the work papers provided so the audit is not late, and to maintain the day-to-day operations. So right now we are fully staffed. We've had staff on hand. So we're hopeful that we can transition to those things now that we have properly trained staff and staff where they should be. But other than that, I have no other comments.
Thanks, Robert. And just a couple of more things we're required to communicate here. We're required to talk about the accounting policies. And the accounting policies, I believe, are the first footnote in the financial statements on note 1. And I would have to say that a district of this size, your accounting policies are spot on for what we would expect to see for a district of this size. One new standard that was adopted, but I don't think it had any impact on subscription-based IT arrangements that are multi-year arrangements. So I don't believe that had any impact to the district. Next slide. Oh, there we go. Judgments about accounting estimates, and there are some accounting estimates in here. I think that the accounting estimates, we look at them, we believe that they're sufficient, and probably the big one the district is responsible for is capital assets. So they pick useful lives of all their different kind of capital assets, whether it be buildings or furniture and fixtures, vehicles, etc. They pick a life, and then they depreciate it straight line over the life of that asset. And if you get rid of the asset before it's fully depreciated, then you have a loss on disposal. But the district tracks all that and does an adequate job on that. There are two great big, huge liabilities in your full accrual financial statements, and that is related to the liability for ERB and the liability for RHCA. So those plans, as everybody knows, are underfunded, and the accounting standards require that the district pick up their pro-rata portion of the unfunded liability. That is an estimate, certainly, because there's a lot of actuarial assumptions that go into that. The district doesn't itself get involved in those actuarial assumptions. That's done over at ERB and RHCA by their actuaries, but you get the numbers on your financial statements. So you've actually got sort of two different sets of statements in here. You've got what's called full accrual statements up front, which has all your liabilities and your capital assets and things like that. And then the second set of statements, which covers the, I don't know, what, 50 or 60 funds that the district had. Maybe it's more than that. It's a lot. But there's a lot of funds, and those are on a budgetary basis, which is basically cash plus payroll liabilities. And so those get converted ultimately to full accrual, to modified accrual, and then full accrual. So that's why there's a lot of information in here. And that's something that, again, I think the district could ultimately prepare those. Next slide. Difficulties. I'm happy to report there were no difficulties during the course of the audit. And corrected misstatements or uncorrected misstatements, there were no misstatements that required us to correct the information from the information provided to by the district, and we're not aware of any uncorrected misstatements in the financial statements. And next one, I think we said no disagreements with management. Not aware of any other communication with any other audit firms. And I just want to say that the team really did a good job of getting us the information this year timely. We have a secure portal that we get hundreds of documents uploaded to, and the district was really timely this last year in ensuring that happened. So they did a really good job. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We can go through every number you guys want to go through. I know this is an interesting read for most people, but this is the world that we live in. So, any questions?
Yeah. Sorry, Board President Noble. I mean, Board Member Noble.
the
I'm the
president.
president. That's right.
Board Member Noble. Well, mostly it's just a comment. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the JAG team. I want to say thank you to the audit committee, who are volunteers from throughout the district who oversee this process, of course. And most of all, I want to say thank you to Mr. Martinez and his team, and really underline the fact for the board that we have made a lot of progress in the finance department, and a lot of progress on the audit and the findings. And there is, to me, and I know I've been looking at these audits a lot for a long time, but a lot more clarity here than there used to be. And I really, really appreciate it. So just a wholehearted thank you. I guess I do have one question, which is, Robert, do you have any, I mean, we talked about the preparing the financial statements. Scott mentioned that a couple times. You alluded to it. Do you have any sense of when, timeline on that?
Board Member Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. No, not really. We've had conversations, the superintendent and I've talked with other districts about what they're doing, because although now I am fully staffed, I don't feel like I'm adequately staffed. We run a $400 million budget between payroll, AP, budget, audit, from the beginning of end to the finance world, between 10 employees. This year, there were only 3 of us that worked on the audit. Usually it's about 7 of us, but like I said, we were short staffed and I had new staff that couldn't work on it. So really what my whole priority was to get them up to speed of the history of the audit and where we're going and what their responsibilities are in that, to hopefully give me a little bit time back to either work on preparing those financial statements or to work with maybe an accounting firm to do so. But we have had conversations about it. It just, a direction has not yet been made, but we can talk about that, of course, with the audit committee. And I can share more of that information of what my opinion would be on what we should do.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's very difficult. And I, as the superintendent knows, in my new role, in my other job and other world, have a lot of sympathy for how much there is to keep the wheels on the bus turning in the finance department. There's just a huge volume that needs to happen, and preparing financial statements, I do think, is a worthwhile goal. And for what it's worth, when you see an opening to try, I hope you will, because it's also going to take some time. You're not going to get it, nobody's going to get it right the first time, and how that's going to work. So if we can, I know we've had that goal out there, and if we can, let it be messy at the beginning and just start, because it will be. And how that works with an accounting firm, and in order to get the financial statements that aren't messy done is quite a balance, but it will be a learning curve for everyone, I'm sure.
And board member Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, several of us in business services have created financial statements before, not for Santa Fe Public Schools. The other difficulty is that there used to be some sort of time between audit and budget, at least about a month. And now, as you can see, we started audit in June and budget is now through, June. So we're definitely working towards it.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for all your work.
Anyone else? I have just a couple of things. First, I just want to echo the thanks. This is my third audit, I think, and I'm finally starting to get the hang of it. Um, I I looked over all 170 pages. I can't tell you that I understood every number on 170 pages, but read through it, and it's so helpful to see all of those numbers. And I also just cannot imagine how much work it takes to put that all together and to ensure that the auditors have all of that information. So thank you so much. I'm so happy it's an unmodified opinion. It's on time, and having seen over the past 3 years that progress has been made every year under your direction for the audit findings is really fantastic. Because, I'm not going to say that I want to see audit findings, but when we see audit findings, we know that we're looking for things and we know that we have the right numbers. And so in that way, it's really helpful to see this and to see the progress that's been made. I had just a couple of questions. On the first finding, I think it's the first finding on 127, the liquidity. Have we made improvement on having liquid assets, or are we still at the same sort of place? I think this is like 650,000. Are we in the same spot there? I don't know if you know that right off the top of your head or not. It's the third bullet under condition on 127. Is that helpful at all?
So we have been working towards, okay, so that's in unrestricted cash. Yeah, we've been working towards that.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
And that's something that we did talk about at the February 22nd finance study session.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remembered that. I just couldn't remember how
Yeah.
how we were doing on that.
Yes.
Good to know. Okay, and then we talked about bars. You talked about working with the bank. I think it's the last finding on HR paperwork. Actually, I think I know the answer to this question, having talked with the superintendent, but we're making progress on, we have a sort of new thing in place where we'll make sure that the paperwork is in place before the person begins their work. Is that the case, Superintendent? Do you want to speak to
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Board President Anderson, members of the board. Yes, we've talked to our HR department, our HR director, when we go through new hire orientation to have them complete what's required. Right now, that has been kind of a loose area that we're trying to tighten up.
Cool. I just wanted everyone to know that you all are on top of it. So thank you. That's all I had to say. I really appreciate this. This is fantastic. Each year I learn more and more about how the audit works and I see progress and I really appreciate it. So thank you. Anything else before we move on? Okay, great. So now we will thank you all both so much. Really appreciate it. Now we will move to public forum. Superintendent?
Thank you, Board President Anderson, members of the board. With us tonight, taking us through public forum, is Assistant Superintendent Mr. Carl Morano. Mr. Morano.
Oh, I can do that.
I'm so sorry. We didn't accept the audit. Sorry, Carl. I was so excited with how well we did on the audit that I just moved right past it. I had
Can I go
accepted it in
ahead
my mind.
and move acceptance of the FY23 financial audit?
I'll second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Excellent. Thank you. We have accepted the audit. Now we will move to public forum. It's only the third time we've given you the false start. Superintendent.
Go right ahead, Mr. Morano.
Good evening, President Anderson, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. Just to review, Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education Public Forum ground rules. Public forum includes online and/or virtual participation as needed, as well as in-person comments when the board holds in-person meetings. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue are allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. And please do not discuss employee matters, which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. And tonight, there are no people currently signed up for public forum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morano. Is there anyone here who would like to, who did not sign up, who would like to speak at public forum? Okay, thank you, Mr. Morano. Oh,
We do have.
we have 6 online. Okay,
right,
I'm
we
sorry.
have 6 that
Great. Perfect.
emailed in, so I'll read those. Good evening, President Anderson, Superintendent Chavez, members of the board, and community members. My name is Alette Hansen. I am a concerned junior at Santa Fe High School. Unfortunately, I cannot attend tonight's meeting due to my commitment to dance rehearsal for the Santa Fe High School Student Choreographer Showcase this weekend. I continue to be confronted with the issues of standards-based grading. As of the end of this quarter, my English teacher, Nicole Michelli, has resigned. She is a tenacious, kind, and committed to her students. She has been a true asset to the Santa Fe High community. She indicated that she is leaving due to the Santa Fe Public School standards-based grading policy and poor treatment from the district. It is heartbreaking to lose a teacher like Ms. Michelli over something so avoidable. Over the course of this school year, we have lost our principal, David Vincent, and my teacher, Nicole Michelli, both motivated by standards-based grading, and it's only March. In the early 2010s, the OSSEO school district located in Minnesota implemented a near identical standards-based grading system. They even hired the same consultant at Santa Fe Public Schools, Rick Wormley. On January 22nd, 2013, the teachers packed the audience of their school board meeting and spoke out against standards-based grading. The policy was later removed. Unfortunately, Santa Fe Public Schools has not fostered a sense of security for teachers to feel comfortable sharing their thoughts freely with all of you. In my research, the grand standards-based grading success stories occur at small, project-based learning schools. In this type of environment, teachers are able to dedicate more time to one-on-one learning and can keep a personal account of the student's proficiency. That will never happen at Santa Fe High. We have circa 1,700 students, many of which don't come to class. Teachers cannot be expected to follow each student's individual proficiency, nor is Power School set up to do so. Standards-based grading continues to affect students and teachers' mental health. It has proven to be anxiety-inducing, and no amount of social-emotional learning days will change that fact. My mental health has suffered due to this grading structure. Every day it gets a little harder to go to school and keep my attendance up. Given the events at Santa Fe High over the last few weeks, I sincerely hope that students' mental health is a focus for this board. There is no time for waiting. There is no time for fixing. There is one solution, and that is change. The Office of the Superintendent and the Board of Education needs to seriously address the negative impact of standards-based grading and roll back this system. The replacement grading system should go back to using percentages to deliver true and precise feedback to students. Every assignment should count. Teachers should be able to dictate what works best for their curriculum, including assignments, lessons, participation, and grades. Most importantly, the board should conduct a full 360 review on this implementation and take lessons from this experience. I am 17. I am not a genius, but I know something is wrong. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope you will be attending the dance performance at Santa Fe High School this weekend. The next uh, public forum email comes from Julia Hansen. Good evening, President Anderson, Superintendent Chavez, members of the board and community. My name is Julia Hansen. My daughter is a junior at Santa Fe High School. Here we are. It's 3 months since my last plea in front of this group to address the devastating issues with standards-based grading. We have since lost another Santa Fe High School principal, as well as my daughter's English teacher. Are you now willing to heed my warning from December 14th that Santa Fe High School faces unprecedented faculty and staff attrition due to the unbearable duress of this flawed implementation? Will you accept the departure of David Vincent and Nicole Michelli, both clearly communicating that standards-based grading and the district as key factors in their mid-year resignations as a clarion call for change? Or at minimum, put this on the top of your agenda for discussion at the Board of Education. Will you reach out to parents and students to listen openly to their concerns? While President Bose did not respond to my January 10th email addressed to her, in response to another parent's email, she replied that implementation of curriculum and instruction is not under the purview of the board. I ask you, what does fall under the purview of the Board of Education, if not the heartbreaking, increased self-harm, heightened mental health issues, low morale, resignation of talent and resources, declining student attendance, and lack of parent and student engagement in the largest high school in the district? This board and Office of Superintendent categorically ignored my request for a standards-based grading review and action on December 14th. I received no follow-up nor outreach from this group. You will likely dismiss this public forum submission with the same level of disdain and disinterest. You collectively hope the parents and students that have spoken up about SBG will simply graduate and fade to dark. Well, I address you not just for my daughter's struggle, and struggle it is, but that of her peers and the valued teachers that can't advocate on this issue due to the fear of retribution from the district. We will continue to hold to account this group to address the most detrimental current issue in the Santa Fe Public Schools District. Beyond my daughter's graduation in 2025, we represent the larger community's interest to improve the public education in Santa Fe, the mental health of our youth, and our absolute commitment to attract and retain great teacher talent. We will not be silenced. We will not be ignored. Please act, and please act now. This next public forum email is from Mary Diamond. She is an ESS and ELD teacher at Capitol High School. Dear School Board, I am a high school English language development teacher in this district. This means I teach students learning English as a second language or have some sort of disability that makes focusing on academics challenging. It is heartbreaking to see my students' faces buried in their phones when they are supposed to be focusing on the very instruction they need to improve test scores and grades. These same devices that are successfully competing with teachers for attention are also responsible for delivering negative, hostile, and harassing messages to them 24/7. Numerous studies have also found that students' mental health issues began increasing exponentially as their ability to sustain attention has been shrinking since they switched from their flip phones to their smartphones around 2015. In addition to their attention spans, their ability to reason, creatively problem solve, and think critically about the world are being eroded away by these electronic devices. It is a problem bigger than all of us, and I believe it is a discussion worth having. In fact, more and more school districts around the world are implementing zero tolerance cell phone policies in all of their schools after having such conversations. Currently, Capitol High School's policy is similar to several schools I research. It states students may bring cell phones to school. Cell phones must be turned off, silenced while inside any classroom. If the student does not adhere to this rule, you must call for security to escort the student to Jennifer Garcia to take the cell phone. Do not ever take a student's phone away, or you will be liable for it being lost or damaged. A progressive discipline plan is in place for repeat offenders. Teachers must abide by the same rule during instructional time. For this policy to be effective, all teachers must consistently follow the policy, which impacts instructional time. As a result, that is why my colleagues and I see in our classroom on a regular basis students in tears because they are having a texting argument with their parent or friend, students completely focused on a complex writing assignment when someone's phone rings, suddenly all thinking activity ceases, students getting visibly upset after viewing a text during class, students focusing on changing their music, charging their earbuds, phones, watches instead of focusing on classwork. Students asking to leave class to take a call. Students leaning their cell phones against their Chromebook screen so they appear to be working while they watch TikTok. As you can see, policies like this also result in a tremendous amount of lost instruction time as we redirect the phone user, listen to the reasons for their cell phone use during class, call security for every non-compliant student. In addition to the obvious distraction of having all the entertainment in the world in the palm of a student's hand, addressing and readdressing this issue every time any student accesses his phone, earbuds, watch, etc., means no learning is taking place at this time. The solution to a multitude of issues plaguing our students can be resolved by a zero tolerance cell phone policy. Professor Perea, lecturer on education and co chair of the Teaching and Leadership Program. That's the time. Next public forum email comes from Anissa Berenzin. Dear board members, superintendent, and Madam President, my name is Anissa Berenzin, and I'm currently a junior at Santa Fe High. Over the course of the past year during the implementation of standards-based grading, I have seen the firsthand effects of it on campus and within classrooms. Never once have I seen work submission and absenteeism this bad, but also never have I seen teachers so broken down by their own school district. I am not one to speak on what the teachers are feeling. However, when one of the best, if not the best teacher within Santa Fe High School quits, then I think that indicates serious issues within the implementation and infrastructure of standards-based grading and the district itself. As for myself, I was once a straight A student. However, grades are now so volatile that I have 2 Fs in classes I should be passing. I have lost the energy to try and keep up with this system and its ever quick changes because this wasn't ready to be rolled out yet. I most oftentimes in school don't know what is expected of me, how to earn a 4, or how to demonstrate proficiency, and going into school, a place that should make learning fun and exciting, is now becoming brittle and dull because teachers alike don't know what to do anymore. You have pulled the rug out from under us and leave us with few to no answers. District staff has repeatedly been dismissive when students have brought forward concerns, or they blindly promise change without any intention to actually work with teachers, students, or parents. While most school district wants to work with their staff, that is seemingly not the case here in Santa Fe. Not only has the culture within Santa Fe Public Schools significantly worsened, however, when we are already in a state that consistently ranks nearly last in education, and decisions like these are why. There have been many losses at Santa Fe High, like losing our principal, David Vincent, and one of the best AP language teachers, Miss Nicole Michelli, and there are only more to come. That is why I urge you all to look into the actual ramifications of this implementation. I urge you all to listen to the valid concerns that teachers are bringing up and try to work with those of us who are in the classroom every day. Next public forum email is from Mandy Torres. To the Santa Fe Public School Board members, Think New Mexico believes that in order to build the best education systems, communities must approach their work always with a student-centered lens. That is why we are writing in support of Superintendent Chavez and his team's commitment to do right by the E.J. Martinez Elementary School community. We strongly believe, based on personal experience and from digging deep into the research, that providing access to small schools rather than consolidating and enlarging schools is the right way to improve student achievement. 4 decades of research shows that smaller schools tend to have lower levels of student alienation and violence and significantly higher student achievement by low income and at risk children. Such schools also tend to have higher rates of satisfaction among students, parents, teachers, and principals. As a former elementary classroom teacher, I personally know this to be true because I taught at a small school throughout my career. Our staff built relationships with every student and family because we had the capacity to do so. This is key for attendance and student achievement because a student simply does not fall through the cracks when every teacher and staff member knows your name and a little something about you. We appreciate the thoughtful approach that Superintendent Chavez and his team have taken by ensuring both the E.J. Martinez and Chaparral communities will have their needs met during construction. Most importantly, the options that have been put forth reflect what the E.J. Martinez community itself believes is important for their students to succeed. The consideration of consolidating administrative buildings used by the adults while keeping schools open for students in their own communities is truly a refreshing change of pace, and we commend Santa Fe Public Schools for committing to a student-centered vision. We believe that the best option is to completely rebuild EJ Martinez, and we especially appreciate that Superintendent Chavez is committed to getting community input at every step of the way. Congratulations to Santa Fe Public Schools for continuing to move education in the right direction. Randy Torres, Think New Mexico Education Reform Director. And the last public forum email comes from Jennifer Kahn. Dear President Gwen Anderson, board members, and Superintendent Chavez, my name is Jennifer Kahn, and my daughter Ziadora Kahn Catechis is a kindergartner at EJ Martinez. The school district kindly presented to attendees of the EJ PTA meeting held on March 11, 2024, that the board would be considering two options for the future of the EJ facility tonight. In both cases, students, faculty, staff, and programs will be temporarily housed at another facility while changes to the EJ campus are made. The first option being a complete replacement of the facility roof, and the second being a new building construction. I write tonight in favor of building a new facility for the EJ family and community. The estimated cost for either option is a few million in difference. However, I believe that once the roof is removed and work begins on a replacement, several other issues will arise that will only increase the cost for this option. I do not doubt once the roof and the heating and cooling systems are removed, there will be discoveries of other issues at hand that will need to be addressed. Some of these items will most likely be an environmental safety concern, such as mold, asbestos, and lead paint, as well as discoveries of other infrastructure replacement needs, such as upgrading electrical systems to meet current codes. All of these require extensive testing and remediation, thereby costing considerably more than what the current estimate predicts. Therefore, why not just build a new facility that meets the needs of the community and provides environmental and health safeties? This facility could provide students with the infrastructure to ensure the state-of-the-art modern technology can be installed and utilized by faculty, staff, and students. The new building could also be structured in a way that provides modern-day practices to protect faculty, staff, and students from outside threats to life and health. I urge the board to choose to build a new facility for the EJ campus, community, faculty, staff, and students. And that concludes public forum.
Thank you so much, Ms.
If I can
Morano.
make a
Yes,
comment,
absolutely.
Board President Anderson, we did receive an additional submission that violated one of the ground rules for public forum, but I will send it to the board members tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Now we will move to our union update, and I see NEA President Grace Mayer. Welcome.
Good evening, Grace Mayer, NEA Santa Fe President, and our teacher at Milagro Middle School. So I'm going to address the board on a few issues, mostly to discuss some of the legislative session and how disappointing it was for NEA Santa Fe and its membership and the workforce here at Santa Fe Public Schools. Under, a 30-day session, obviously you guys know that the governor has to approve, some of the things to move forward in committees, and we put forth a bill, we meaning NEA New Mexico, working closely with NEA Santa Fe, put forward, and its other locals, a reduction of class size and class load bill. There's an urgent need in our district and throughout the state to reduce, especially in early childhood, some of the numbers of our pre-K from 20 to at least, 15 or 18. And in kindergarten from 20 students, which is basically there's 2 adults in those rooms, and 2 adults for 24-year-olds is not adequate at all. One is the teacher, one's the assistant. We can't, I know that the governor and the state wants, and, communities around New Mexico want to expand pre-K programs, but we can't do it if we don't have the staff, and we can't do it if it's not a workable situation. We've had several staff members this year leave those positions, or other folks who uh, were licensed in certain other areas in education attempt to go into pre-K programs, but because of the numbers and some of the issues around the requirements for pre-K, which are significant, including additional education, additional observations, and literally videotaping kids doing work every week and submitting that. Those are things that in regular general ed, like K through 6, are not requirements. And they're not requirements for the educational assistants to attend college level courses, some of which they have been able to do, and they're paid for. Some of them have it paid for if they've never attended school before, but others who have degrees, they don't necessarily get it paid for. So there's a lot of issues that someone needs to do a deep dive into regarding that, because it's actually um, hindering the ability of the district to hire people that are willing to work with those kids. But if you have a young child yourself and can't attend some of those classes or can't do that extra work, you know, you're going to choose your family and your child over that position, and you're going to hopefully maybe just become a kindergarten or first grade educational assistant for our district and not leave the career uh, you know in pre-K and not go into education, but go into early childhood care or some profession where you're still dealing with kids. But there's a real big issue with the department, early ed department, and the requirements for the public ed department as well. And we've been discussing it with the superintendent because it also overlaps with our early child care center, and the requirements there are becoming, because we do have the 3-year-olds, that's some of the issue too. And so uh, that was disappointing that we didn't have those conversations about class size, um, because our proposal for class size was to assist in sort of re-engaging students. NEA New Mexico and NEA Santa Fe and its membership does not believe that extending the school day by 180 instructional days will do that. It's also unconscionable to me that school boards and our legislators were basically overruled in terms of the law that was recently passed last year for the 1140 minutes, which increased our days by, in some cases, 45 minutes for staff, and for students, maybe 30 minutes or 25, which is significant, for especially some younger children, and for the educators, because we really didn't get. I mean, we got a raise, but we extended our day and really didn't get compensated for that time. And now with the PED rule, because the governor um, vetoed the legislative action that would have prevented the PED from mandating the 180 um, for all school districts, um, and then the public education department creating the rule that would require it. They maintained the minutes as well. So we have 1140 minutes, and then we have to extend the calendar by a minimum, I would say, of 5 days, although the superintendent said 6 on the newspaper, so I'm not really sure where we're at. But that, for 9-month employees, which includes not just educators, there isn't necessarily money dedicated to that. So when you go to your budget in the next week or two, and I'm sure Mr. Martinez will tell you that you're going to have to be looking in creative ways to how to fill that gap there, because not only will the teachers, the educational assistants, the nurses at your school sites, the related service providers, your bus drivers and bus assistants, your cafeteria workers. You're all going to, that their contract is going to be extended for those instructional days to meet with those students. And then in addition to that, we still have our professional development that which is kind of embedded in our early release days. But there's discussion of literacy mandates and focuses, and so is that going to be more PD? There's money attached to that, but does that mean there's going to be more PD than the 30 or 60 hours? Because currently the district is paying for a requirement for letters training, which isn't covered by the PED or in the legislation. So you're already behind. There's so many unfounded mandates at this point, and this, as it turns out, is going to be another kind of look in that direction. But I actually think that the school boards associations and the unions and the superintendents should fight this in court because, as far as I'm concerned, the law was 1140. We passed it. It shouldn't be extended by rule, and I think that there should be local control. And clearly, this move does not allow for school boards or local officials to, guarantee to their constituents that their elections matter, because it doesn't matter what you guys say or do, because the governor just overturned it and enforced it by executive rule through the PED. I think that's fundamentally undemocratic, and I will say that to whoever wants to hear that, because you know why do we have elections and vote for people to represent our views if our community is going to be told, well, the governor and the PED is going to decide that? Because we've been working with the district on things like reduction of class size, trying to get other ways to recruit and retain educators through our early child care center, through a housing initiative, which I heard was funded partially, which is good news, but not enough to ensure that we have teachers in those classrooms, or supports professionals, or bus drivers even. And so it's a little disappointing when there was also incentive, um, hiring incentives for police officers, but not for educators. And I I'm all for making sure that we have safe communities, but I'm certainly more interested in educating our young students in ways that would assist, like the community members that are here, to maintain their employment beyond their retirement age, which you have a retiring workforce in Santa Fe Public Schools. You're not going to find replacements if we don't think of creative ways to incentivize young people to go into the profession and to be able to afford to live here, which means housing. And if anyone from the city, including the mayor, is listening, you need to start partnering already. We've been asking for a decade, I think, to start to get these things rolling. And, if you can't live in the community you work in, then everybody loses. The kids lose, the employee loses, and the community loses. It loses financially because you're not spending your money here. You're spending it where you live in Rio Rancho or some other, northern cities. The students are losing out because you're not attending those after school things. You can't really make a commitment if you're traveling 2 hours in different directions. And there's only a certain number of trains or buses or carpool things that leave from Santa Fe. And so some of our folks have to be on a bus at 4:25. So they're not staying late for anything. And that's no fault of their own. They have to, make it work for them and their family. And they're still on an hour and a half trip somewhere. Um, so I wanted to also mention that, and this really irks me, is that it was made clear in the PED requirements of the rule for 180 that you can't include any recess time in instructional minutes. However, this board has passed a policy that requires a half an hour, 15 minutes during recess or at the beginning or at the end of the day. However, it works out in the school day. Um, we've determined for years that students, especially in younger grades, need a break, need to exercise, need to, change gears and do other stuff. And when I worked in elementary school, we used to say to get their yayas out and kind of get excited and then come back in and settle down and get to work. But maybe we can transfer those minutes to social and emotional learning time. But it's unconscionable to think that kids are going to sit still for 7.5 hours. Sorry. I mean, they don't, whoever's making these decisions hasn't worked in education, doesn't understand what the needs of a young child and even a young adult are. Our older students need a break. They need to go outside, get a little air, you know, take a walk around campus. We have these beautiful areas outside our campuses, and they need to be able to, refocus and regroup. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention. I also wanted to talk about testing mandates have increased in the last couple of years. We're losing at a minimum 15 days now. So we're gearing up to do a week of testing, like when we get back from spring break. And I just don't understand the rationale from the PED. We want to increase instructional days. We have, a truancy rate, of 35%, and we're increasing testing days, which diminishes instruction. So I, again, know that this board in Santa Fe Public Schools has led the way on trying to reduce testing, because testing isn't teaching, and it's not gonna, assist us in the ways that we need. I think directly with students to re-engage them and to get them more focused on, you know, what it is they want to accomplish through their education, because those partnerships with parents completely broke down clearly. And so we're having issues like the one you heard from the employee that in public forum that talked about the phone and the distraction of that. And there is that complete breakdown. I mean, I experience this every day. Well, it's my parent. I was like, well, let me talk to your parent because I'm going to tell them you're at school and you can't be on the phone. But we've in order to reconnect with that family and talk to them about the need for that child to put down the phone to learn, we need to also realize that all of these other things are distracting them too. And the testing regimen is ridiculous. I'm sorry. It just is. It's always been. And I thought we moved away, and now we're back to it. Just like we're back to mandating a one size fits all approach to a calendar and what instruction looks like in different areas, urban, rural parts of New Mexico. Also, the PED. I'm really concerned about our community schools and our community school coordinators who are part of our bargaining unit, who we have many experienced people who this district received a 3-year grant for these folks to be hired to move into the future, and now that's being pulled away. And unless you're prepared to do a reduction in force, I think you need to seriously consider challenging how the PED can do that. How can they say you're going to get this amount of money for the next 3 years? You made the investment, you hired those people. They are from our community, they know our kids, they're doing great work. And you can't just pull them out now and say, oh, well, you have to reapply. Well, why? Why did we get a 3-year commitment? And, NEA New Mexico, NEA national, and NEA Santa Fe knows that those folks are critical because they fill in some of those gaps that we can't do as educators, which you guys all know and have made a commitment to, work with. So I'm really concerned that the implications of a lot of these things are really going to harm Santa Fe Public Schools directly and our community, our students, and our workforce. So I think that's about it. I'm sorry that was a little doom and gloom, but I'm just like beside myself with what has been. I feel like, not only the School Boards Association, but the Superintendents Association and the unions really need to say what is going on. You can't just like change everything literally over, through rule, change the law, and then expect us or with these award letters, which everything comes late to begin with. So we probably didn't even get half of the stuff we needed. I'm sure it was delayed if we have it all up front to begin with. And so now to reapply, why do we need to reapply? There is resource. I know that we asked for more money for community schools than what was received, but there is some above the line funding that maybe can be moved to secure these positions for at least a year until that reapplication process moves forward, so that those employees maintain their employment here. Some of them may be able to. There's a few of them that may have some other licensure level and may be able to, move to a different position that might be available. They might be a social worker or something like that, but that would be only maybe the few. But I really think we need to understand that, you know, I feel like we have a commitment to those folks to maintain their employment until we figure out what's happened with this and why the PED is doing that. Another issue I want to bring up, which a lot of folks, especially at Santa Fe High and Capitol, are concerned about standard-based grading. And the reality is we're not really doing it. We're doing some sort of hybrid version of standard-based grading within our school system because we're converting what these into traditional grades, and they're not. And if you want kids to meet standards and you're grading on standards, then it should just show up like the 1 through 4, and they should be addressing those standards or whether or not they're meeting them. And I do have to say that there is situations with Power School, and we brought it to the attention of the district. Something's going on because things don't sync up correctly, and our grading is getting very frustrating because we think we're doing what we need to ensure that students getting a certain grade, but then they turn to us and they say, well, how did I get, you know this and it turned into that? And as an educator, I'm like, I don't know. And so then I have to go to my administrator or to someone and say, okay, why did this happen? But more importantly, how do I fix it so that that child, it's reflective of what that child learned in that class? And so there is some of that happening. I know that it's not within like even the unions, I guess leverage or to influence that. The superintendent, this curriculum and instruction department can tell employees like, this is the grading system we want you to use and implement, and we have been trained on things, but it's frustrating because some of it isn't lining up. And I'm really saddened by the fact that some of our staff are leaving and are stating that as a reason for it. But I think there's other issues that have been also problematic for a few years. And one of those things is, again, we have a retiring workforce. We have a hard time recruiting people. We've had vacancies. There's been a worldwide pandemic. We still don't have sufficient staff. And one more thing. When the district went over to contracting out for substitutes, that was pretty much a disaster for a lot of schools, including some of our high schools and middle schools. We don't have the substitutes we need that are picking up these positions. So as a result, our teachers are still having to sell their preps over and over on a daily basis to make up for that. And that's just not acceptable. Some of our students have long-term subs or, random subs, or they're brought into, a cafeteria with two groups of people and asked to work on some, modified online version of a curriculum, which is a band-aid, not sustainable. But the fact of the matter is that has to do with staffing, and it has to do with recruiting and retaining people. And so I'm here to just really push that we need to expand our educators and our related service providers and our nurses and all those people. We need to hire people, not start to look at ways at how we're going to manage budgets and things by cutting staff. And I'm a little concerned about the conversations that I heard went on at EJ and I know the piles of money are different. Capital funding is different than the SEG. I'm totally aware of that, but we don't have the resources there. As someone who's been on the CRC for over a decade, we don't have $20 million. I mean, to rebuild a school or to do all this other stuff. I mean, every presentation this board has received, you've been told that after the pandemic, everything's increased, doubled the cost of materials, the cost of labor. So even a projection of a rebuild for like Mandela, it doubled, right? And then you had to pull it back. So I think you need to be careful of what, you know, the promises that you made, because, there was promises made, and I think we're in year 10 of Mandela. You know what I mean? So like, we can't just say that we're going to, maintain all of these sites and think that we can staff it, that it's just going to work out, we can build it, they will come or something. I mean, we're reducing our number of students. We don't have the staff necessarily to cover some of that, because our workforce is retiring. But beyond that, I just think, like, practically, you have to understand how difficult it is to manage a district that's a medium-sized district, but you have tons of properties and you have tons of real estate, and it costs money to keep them up, to manage them, to make sure that every one of them has a principal and a staff member and a nurse and this and that. Once you start saying, okay, well, we're going to rebuild a school for 190 kids here and 120 kids here, and then, you know, 200 here, you know, you have to wonder why we're doing that. I mean, a small school, in my view, is 350. Two or three of our schools right now could be combined to fit into that number. And so I just think that you need to, I know there's gonna be hate mail to me, and it's gonna be like, wow, how could the union president say that? But it's partly about our staffing shortage. And it's not fair that that someone at a small school like that has a class of 12, and then a larger school like El Camino has 24 in the same grade level. And, if we can get down some numbers and get some, have that worked out, maybe it won't, you know, you have more resources when you have a school of 350, because you can have or 400. You can have a full-time FTE for certain things. You can have a full-time nurse. You can have, But if you have schools of 120 or stuff, you have people 0.2, 0.4 moving around, which again, that's not a great like model for the educational program. Okay, I probably said too much, but I'm going to stop there. And if you guys have any questions, I'm here. If not, I'll go sit down.
Thank you so much. It wasn't too much. Thanks. I appreciate
Okay.
all you do. Does anyone have anything? I just want to make a comment. You can sit down. There's no need for you to hang out. But I mean, the things you're going through with the legislature, testing, class size, recess, PD, one size fits all, community school funding. I think I've checked out every book from the public library on education that there is, and I feel like we just did the opposite of what all of them say. So I'm hopeful that we can work on using our influence. Our legislators are really receptive when we talk to them. Um, so whatever we can do to make sure, and there are legislators who are educators who know these things, and I know talk about them. So I'm hopeful that as we move forward, legislative session by legislative session, that we move forward and not backwards, and that what our legislators pass is what we follow and not necessarily what's made by an unelected body. So thank you for saying that. All right, now we move to the best part of the meeting, student board member announcements and follow-up.
My name is Hami Park, and I'll be representing Santa Fe High. So, on a lighter note, this month there have been ongoing achievements throughout the Santa Fe High community. And first, I'd like to congratulate our Demons varsity boys basketball team for playing second in the district, as well as ROTC had many exceptional students last Saturday, as well as female color guard placing first. Santa Fe Swimming has also wrapped up with seniors Rodian Jacques and Henry Lyons breaking Santa Fe High School records. And this Thursday and Friday, MPA will commence for choir, band, and orchestra. However, recently the Santa Fe High Choir claimed the highest rating of a superior. Upcoming on April 11th, the Santa Fe High School Band will be performing alongside the other high schools and community bands at the Lensic Theater. And finally, the Santa Fe High Dance will showcase its student choreography in the theater.
Hi, my name is Erin. I represent Capitol High School. We hosted Jacob Torres, a renowned NASA scientist, at our school last week. Mr. Torres met with students to discuss the science field and college preparedness. Our WAVE group was put together a variety of events and presentations for Gun Violence Awareness Week. We look forward to hosting the Dukes of Yale this Wednesday, 3/13, so today. They will perform and meet with our music students, so band, choir, guitar, piano, and choir, to discuss music programs in college as well as music scholarships. We will have Bunny Bingo this Friday. We have over 60 seniors pursuing the bilingual seal. Students who are presenting will do so this week on March 18th. This coming Thursday, we will have a Paying for College workshop for families in our library. We'll have an English session and a Spanish session. And that's all. That concludes.
And I'm Lucas Robbins. I'll be reading the announcements for ECO, Desert Sage, and Mandela. So as for ECO, students that have participated in the Pro Skills program will have a hiring event March 13th. Students have been preparing resumes and interview skills, which they will utilize during this hiring event. Now that the weather's getting nicer, ECO will be resuming their go-kart racing Saturdays. Go-Karts Club will be prepping carts for racing. And spring recruitment, the open house will be March 19th from 5 to 6 p.m. Any 8th grader or transfer students and families interested in ECO are invited to attend. Desert Sage will be continuing to promote after-school tutoring for students that need extra help. And as for Mandela, Mandela's junior class had the opportunity to attend an illustrative 2-day conference regarding the topic fire and water at the United World College USA campus located in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Mandela and a host of other IB schools from New Mexico attended the conference and represented well. The first sets of International Baccalaureate examinations are beginning with Mandela seniors sitting for their foreign language speaking assessments this week. We wish them luck. And Mandela will have our SEL Day on March 18th. Our 7th and 8th grade will visit the Community College Planetarium and attend a wellness seminar. Our 9th grade will either hike Sun Mountain or work on team building at the Mountain Center. Our 11th grade will volunteer at Habitat for Humanity, and our 10th and 12th graders will watch a movie at Violet Crown and hold small group discussions afterwards.
Thank you all so much. Are there any questions or comments for our student board members? Yes.
I just had a quick comment that my dad attended that career fair at ECO yesterday as a representative from the Santa Fe Home Builders Association, and he said it was fantastic. He said the students seemed really engaged and there were lots of community partners there, and he thought it was a really great program. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Okay, now we'll move to board announcements and follow up. Yes.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, I was able to go to Santa Fe High today and see their community schools program, which is quite impressive. And I'm very upset about the fact that they have to reapply for all these things again. And they're in their 4th year, and those kinds of programs should remain. They should not be done for a few years and then taken away. But anyway, he's done a really great job there. He's got a lot of outside connections as well as internal connections in the school. He's moved his office to the library, and he's created a nice room that for, with couches and chairs and stuff where they can meet, and it's been very successful, and I hope that it can continue, but we don't know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other board announcements or follow up? I'll just say that 2 of the schools that I represent have competing events tomorrow, so take your pick. Salazar is having a very cool career fair tomorrow at 5 p.m. That I highly recommend. They're doing amazing things at Salazar, and Nava has a literacy night that should be also really exciting. My children go to Nava, so I will be there, but I will be at Salazar in spirit. And it's just great to see our schools, our Midtown schools, doing such really awesome and engaging, and we talk about family engagement all the time, but doing these events, I know they're happening all over the district, but it's just really fantastic to see. Yes.
Thing. Artworks is having a show tomorrow at the Community Convention Center Gallery, and so I think everybody should attend if
Yeah,
they can.
everybody you get a pick of fantastic events tomorrow night.
Yep.
I love it. Don't go see a movie tomorrow night. You've got more stuff to do. All right, wonderful. So we'll now move on to superintendent announcements and follow up.
Thank you, Board President Anderson, members of the board. Just want to remind everybody, due to the rule being announced, the starting date will not change. We're going to take our time and look at all the variables within the rule before we make any adjustments and public announcement as far as the 180-day and the 24-25 Santa Fe Public School calendar. But I can say the start date will not change either way. I also want to mention that I did meet with the Public Education Department today with a small team, and also I'll be meeting with them on Monday to discuss the community school issues that we heard. So that is ongoing. That is something that is of great concern because we do have to reapply after we received the award. And then last but not least, but I did want to make this announcement, we will be purchasing new band uniforms for Santa Fe High as they have been requested, and it's partly due to staying within our budget. So that does conclude my updates and announcements. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? Great, great. Let's move to our presentations. Superintendent?
Thank you, Board President Anderson, members of the board. Our first presentation tonight will be co-hosted by our CFO once again, Mr. Robert Martinez.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, thank you. Tonight, I have Eric Harrigan with us from RBC Capital Markets, and he is going to be providing the board an update on the proposed general obligation bond and educational technology note issuance, providing history of tax rates, assessed valuation, and timelines for the upcoming GO and ETN bond sale. I'll turn it over to Eric.
Great. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. There should be a presentation up on the screen, which there is. So the district's assessed value continues to grow very well. This past year, you saw almost 11% growth in your tax base. This was really supported by strong reappraisals in residential home values. Not only in Santa Fe, but all across the country, we have been seeing fairly significant increases in home values over the last few years, and the district is certainly benefiting from this. And this really helps with the district in not only this upcoming bond issue, but your in terms of your next election. We're projecting, a higher par amount that the district can go to voters and continue to maintain the existing tax rate that the district has. On page 2 of the presentation, these are the list of all of the various mill levies that the district levies. There's an operational, there's 2 mill, there's HB 33, there's also debt service, and then your ETNs. And as we talk about the issuance of the upcoming bonds, for both the GO bonds and the ETNs, this will continue to maintain these historical debt service tax rates that the district has outstanding. On page 3 of the presentation, these are all of the bonds that the district has outstanding. You have a really great debt profile. You pay off your debt very quickly. This allows for the district to layer in future bonds and continue to maintain those tax rates that I just mentioned. On the next page, so in 2021, voters authorized the issuance of up to 100 million. The district has sold 50 million so far. For this next sale, we anticipate selling 28 million, and this will provide the district with 22 million to be sold in 2025, and that will exhaust the authorization. In addition, in conjunction with the issuance of those bonds, the district will also issue its first series of voter-authorized education technology notes in the amount of 11 million, voters authorized 55 million. Just kind of projecting forward, so we anticipate that when the district goes back to voters in November of 2025, the district will be able to request voters authorize the issuance of up to 140 million in general obligation bonds that'll continue to maintain your existing GO bond tax rate. HB 33 was passed in November of 2021, so you don't have to go back to voters until the 2025 election, just because of when that expires and lining up when the board has an election and when your mill levies expires. And then SB 9 was just passed, so you don't have to go back to voters until November of 2029. We do have just kind of an election timing chart here. I won't go through it since we already kind of touched on a couple of those. We do have, as usual, several slides on the economy and sort of what's been going on with interest rates. And I just want to kind of, just provide, high level. Interest rates really hit kind of a high in November. At that point, there was a discussion about the Federal Reserve pivoting and potentially reducing, the overnight lending rate, potentially this year. I will say, though, that, although rates have come down since November, we've seen, fairly, kind of stubbornly high, inflationary numbers. CPI came out on Tuesday, it was higher than anticipated. PPI came out today, higher than anticipated. All of that resulted in, slightly higher interest rates in both the Treasury market and the municipal market. And really what that means is that the Federal Reserve will continue to keep, rates higher for longer. But there continues to be a lot of demand for municipal debt, and we anticipate that there will be strong demand for the district's bonds when they go out to when you go out to sell. So from a timing standpoint, we anticipate coming back to you all at your next meeting in April. We would then look at selling the bonds in early May and then closing and having those funds available for the district in the June timeframe. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Right. If not, we can move. Oh, do you have one? Okay, Board Member Noble.
No, I just want to say thank you. I always appreciate this, and I, you know, it's really important, and that 140 million figure for general obligation bonds stands out pretty significantly. But really, just always appreciate staying up to date on our bonds and Mr. Harrigan's time. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Appreciate this. Right. Wonderful. So now we'll move to our next presentation. Superintendent.
Thank you very much, Board President Anderson, members of the board. Tonight, Deputy Superintendent Wagner and I will take you through the E.J. Martinez relocation and facility needs. Deputy Superintendent.
Good evening, Board President, Board members, Superintendent. I'll walk you through this brief presentation and then leave ample time for the superintendent to comment and for your questions. This includes our recommendation or our action on relocation of the E.J. Martinez School for the 24-25 school year, and a summary of facility needs on which you may choose to direct the Community Review Committee to take action on. So we'll go ahead with the first slide. Most of this, the board and the public have heard over time as a part of your facility master plan. This is information we deliver. We talk about these issues in the Community Review Committee meetings, but it's really nice to just put all the information in front of us again as to why we're at a decision-making point with the E.J. Martinez facility. So it's an elementary school that was built in 1959. There's currently approximately 180 students enrolled, 20 full-time staff and 10 part-time staff. Our facilities master plan tells us that the program capacity is around 333 students. Our facilities master plan also tells us that the enrollment projections of approximately 180 are to remain relatively flat. This isn't new information. These are things that came about as a part of the 2021 facilities master plan report. The superintendent and staff reported to you that this past summer, actually, roughly 40% of the school was closed due to an aging roof that was problematic, and told us we should no longer occupy that portion of the facility. We identified the remaining portions to be safe for the current school year. Those areas have reached the end of their useful life, and we have recommended that the facility be vacated by June of this calendar year. Okay. While a roof sounds like an easy dilemma to solve for, this particular roof is aged and designed in a fashion that it's quite complex. The roof replacement requires complete removal of all equipment on the roof, which is the heating and cooling system, down to the deck. So that's down to really the top of the building. You can go to the next slide. The HVAC and roof ducting and electrical conduits, they all need to be removed and replaced. So this is an example. The example I like to use is E.J. Martinez is a really sweet school. If you walk in the front door, you'll just love it. It sort of makes your heart want to melt, all the sweet things that you can see and feel in the community within the building. But I would equate it to, you know, maybe me on a Monday morning. I put on my makeup and I might look pretty good on the outside, but I might feel really tired and sick on the inside. And that's how E.J. Martinez is feeling at this point in its life cycle. It looks really sweet. Amazing things are happening, but its bones are really, really, really tired. Okay. So that includes its electrical system, it includes its heating and cooling, it includes its roof, and it includes some structures inherent in roof replacement. Okay. So it really just needs a full overhaul. And so it's not a simple thing to do. We can't just take off the roof materials and leave people in the building safely. We need to vacate the building for the duration of the construction project, whatever project we choose to commence with. The current and projected facility conditions just make it unsafe. Okay, so we need to vacate by June. That's the bottom line. Let's go to the next slide. We've done this many times before. I think in the 14 years I've been doing this work, we've done it at least a dozen times. And what I mean by it is find a temporary location for a school that needs to undergo construction. We've done it more recently in other sites, but really, really prominent relocations that I was a big part of. Carlos Gilbert moved to Alameda Middle School in 2008, moved back to the Carlos Gilbert new facility in around 2010, January 2010. At one point in time, Sweeney Elementary School was midway through a construction project. We never like to do it this way. We determined we would not complete the project in time to move back into the building for school to start. We relocated a portion of the Sweeney school to the Connie campus. Okay, and then we moved them back. We moved the Atalaya entire school to the Connie location so that we could rebuild that location. So again, these are just examples of times we've done this in the past. It sounds really complicated, but we've done it. We've done it really well. At this point in time in the district's, facility path, we don't have any vacant buildings that are suitable for a relocation of an entire school. So we put on our thinking caps, and through weeks of thorough analysis, we looked at buildings across the district, which we know are under enrolled. Again, information we've talked about during the facility master plan, during multiple planning and meeting sessions around construction and facilities. We know we have underutilized facilities. So we looked at many of them, all of them actually. And we determined that Chaparral Elementary School is the best match to temporarily house EJ Martinez. Okay, again, we've done this before. So we had sort of a matrix how to identify the location that would be best suited to receive EJ Martinez so that they could undergo whatever construction we identify for them. Let's go to the next slide. So why we're here tonight is to talk to you about sort of the how to move forward the EJ Martinez facility improvements. So we know that our next step is to move EJ Martinez to Chaparral. We've been to those two communities and talked to them, and the sending and receiving schools are willing to go through this process, knowing that their end goal will be to achieve a safe facility to return EJ Martinez to at the end. So we generally use general obligation bond funds, which we just heard about tonight. Our bonding capacity is increasing for next bond elections. Very exciting. But we typically use GEO bond funds for big projects like what EJ Martinez is requiring. We know, again, through many public presentations over the last 18 to 24 months, that the remainder of the 2021 GEO bond are committed. There's projects in motion. Okay. Examples of those projects: Ortiz is underway. Mandela is in planning and design for construction. The transportation facility was just approved, and that's about to go under construction. So we have a path forward with the remaining 2021 funds. And so EJ Martinez needs to carve out a spot in the 2025 GEO bond election. And the facility master plan is underway right now. And as you know, we'll bring that to you for approval from the Community Review Committee. And that'll include a master list of priority projects. And so if we go to the next couple of slides, we have two options to remedy the age and fatigue of the EJ Martinez facility. And they're outlined in really simple terms here that have taken months and months of expert analysis. including people on my team and contractors and facility master plan data. And yet, as we know, project scope and project costs are moving targets until you're actually doing the project. So I just, that's sort of my way of saying this is what we know right now. That we can replace the roof and the heating and cooling system and the electrical and put in all the supports to make the EJ facility safe with the new roof and systems for around $11 to $12 million. But we also know in the asterisk items down below that but will be required to follow new building code requirements. That once we touch more than 50% of the facility, we're going to have to start looking at energy conservation measures. We're going to have to start looking at things like windows, doors, building envelope, and that 11 to 12 million dollar project figure, which is associated with the roof, the heating and cooling, the electrical systems, is going to start to balloon because those building requirements will increase what we have to do to successfully complete the project. The funding source would be from the 2025 GEO bond. We project, because $11 to $12 million is a big project. Those are the kind of numbers we see associated with GEO bonds. The timeline once funded would be approximately 18 to 20 months. I see one other consideration. The public school facility authority, actually, not the finance authority, tells us that when the cost to do repairs or renovations in a building is 60% or greater than what it might be to replace the building, that a district really wants to think thoughtfully about what you're doing, right? It's about getting the best value for the long run. And another system I know for a fact that is very fatigued in the EJ Martinez facility that you don't see listed on this slide is the plumbing. And so that's another example of, if we're going to go in and do a project and it's 60% or greater than the cost to replace, and the building code requires us to roll up our sleeves and do all these other things, then we'll go to the next slide. We might want to just think about rebuilding the school. And we've done this on multiple occasions. Again, it's not something new. Examples, Atalaya, Carlos Gilbert, off the top of my head, where we started with renovation, addition ideas, and then really converted to a full rebuild. The cost projected, again, today, this is information that we have today, would be between 14 and 18 million. The funding source, again, would be the GEO bond. You'll see the project scope once funded. Demolition, design, construction duration would be about 2 years. We can go to the next slide. So the Board of Education next steps are really around direction for the Community Review Committee. Okay, because to prioritize projects with this dollar amount require that they be a part of our facilities master plan. If it's a priority to the board to give to the CRC, we'll incorporate that into the facility master plan you'll approve. I anticipate at the end of this calendar year becomes incorporated into the next GEO bond rollout, and the work can commence that way. So I think, Superintendent, unless you think I missed anything, we've given this information in different ways in different forums. We can stand for questions.
And I think you've covered it. We've talked about this 4 times now. This is the 5th this week, maybe many more, even with the media. So we will stand for questions and comments, and then at the end, I can make a recommendation.
Yeah, Secretary Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. Forget I'm a secretary. I attended both the faculty meeting and the PTA meeting, and I didn't see really any resistance from either group. I mean, they were very interested in what was going to happen, and they were very happy that the school would be going as a school to another place and they would stay together. And I think that's really important.
Great. Yes, Board Member Noble.
I'd love also to hear about any feedback from the Chaparral community.
Yeah, thank you for that, Board Member Noble, President Anderson, members of the board. We did have two meetings. The first meeting was on Monday with the EJ community, both staff and parents. The second meeting was on Tuesday with staff from Chaparral and also staff from, I'm sorry, the parents from Chaparral. And we did acknowledge that there's going to be some transition, potential hardships. They had a lot of questions. Some of them at this point in time we were unable to answer, such as what is parent drop off and pickup going to look like? What is lunch going to look like? We did make a commitment to them, either option that is chosen or the direction of the CRC, to go back and give quarterly updates, use their voice as part of the planning for next steps, being able to hear about what they would like to see. But again, there was a lot of questions from the Chaparral community about the impact that they're going to see, and that was, I think the underlining message is they're concerned. They want some more information, and we did promise them to bring back more information once we move in a direction. It was nice to have firsthand knowledge from Deputy Superintendent Wagner, who went through this process in the past, and has pulled this off. One of the things that I do remember from the Chaparral staff is one of the members said, "We are more than welcome. We're going to be more than welcome to our EJ community, and this is the right thing to do to accept them because they are a school in need." But again, that the parents did have a lot of questions about programming, about what it's going to look like. But at this time, it would have been premature of district staff to go with a plan without engaging with them as to what it looks like.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to recognize, thank you for doing that. Recognize our two principals, Angelique Armillo Ortiz back there at EJ, and then we have Miss Erica Martinez. There you are. You're hiding behind your two parents that grilled us with questions.
Oh, good. You deserve it. All right, wonderful. Do you think now is a good time to sort of talk about the overarching concerns, or do we want to wait until board discussion and possible action?
Personally, I like one subject at a time, so let's do it all now
Okay,
if we can.
great. Excellent. This is great. I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense. If it doesn't make any sense to me to replace the roof and not rebuild the school, like that option just does not compute for me at all. But I did want to talk just sort of like philosophically about, rebuilding schools and about small schools and about some of the things that we sort of talk about when these questions come up, because my kids go to a small school. Miss Patrick is one of our teachers at the small school and also teaches at EJ, right? Pulling double duty. And I love the school, but I often say that I love the school not because of its size. I think that our larger schools have a lot of value. And when we start talking about the value of small schools, the implication is that the larger schools are not valued. And I really, really want to challenge that assumption, regardless of what research has been done to justify small schools. I really want to challenge the idea that the size of a school is what makes it important. I think that probably at EJ, I haven't spent as much time at EJ as I have at Nava, but I think probably leadership, I think probably in instructional quality, I think family engagement. I would imagine that those are all really important factors in what makes EJ a special school, because I know those are the things at Nava that make it a special school. And I've also mentioned that my kids have gone to larger schools, Gonzalez and Cesar Chavez, and we've had excellent experiences at both. And I'll also mention that smaller schools don't necessarily mean smaller class sizes. My daughter was in first grade at Cesar Chavez, and I think there were something like 34 kids in the grade. So there were two classes of 17 kids each, whereas my daughter is in kindergarten at Nava right now, and there are 28 kids. There are 4 adults in the classroom. And at that point, it's not split up into, small. If there had been 2 more kids, we'd have 2 classes of 15, but now we have 1 class with a lot of Valentine's cards to fill out at Valentine's Day, and cupcakes to buy for birthdays. I think, maybe my bigger concern than small schools necessarily are underutilized buildings. And I think that right sizing the building makes a lot of sense. Having a building that's too big for kids it doesn't actually, I don't think, serve children necessarily. I don't think it's better to have a school where you have necessarily more space. So I think right sizing makes a lot of sense. Though that brings me to a sort of longer term concern in talking about the facilities master plan and talking about the next geo bond is thinking about our other buildings. So Nava, for example, small school, but utilizes a lot of its building and is also like maybe not, in like Milagro shape, for example, or Acequia Madre, or these other schools that have been talked about for a long time because of their facility quality. I want to sort of think about, is our vision as a board long term to right size all of the schools, but keep the number of schools that we have, or is it to consolidate schools or whatever? Maybe it comes project by project, but maybe it's also helpful to have like a longer term strategy to think about what's going on. And EJ, clearly we have to act. There's no like putting this off and coming up with a long term board strategy for EJ. Like we have a building that's not able to be used. Um, and in terms of underutilized buildings, I think we as a district really have to think about the fact that we have a declining birth rate and people can't live anywhere in Santa Fe. Our educators can't afford to live here, which means our working families can't necessarily afford to live here. And hopefully, our housing tax is going to help that. But we are probably not going to grow magically as a district. So, thinking about what our long term strategy is in terms of buildings, I think also makes a lot of sense when we look at that. And I think the reimagining committee talking about magnet schools also makes a lot of sense when we have an underutilized building, or if we have a brand new building and people are really excited to go there, thinking about the programming that goes along with that makes a lot of sense. Um, and I know that folks may feel that when we're struggling, we're talking about the budget next year and we're struggling to figure out how we're going to pay for increased instructional time. Like NEA President Mayer brought up, it is two separate pots of money. If we want to put it that way, that probably makes Mr. Martinez die a little inside if I say two pots of money. But this isn't the money. This is money we can go directly to voters for and ask them to invest in schools. And I think our community cares a lot about having good facilities for our children. And I think that these are things that they will want to invest in. And it's not going to take away from our issues with personnel salaries or funding instructional materials. Um, so I just want to throw that out there for whomever is listening and the community and its opinions on what we might do with our schools. So that was my soapbox. I don't know if anyone has any follow up to any of that. Yeah.
Thank you, President Anderson. Um, you know, I think you said it really well, and I kind of just want to tack on that we as a community seem to value keeping schools in their communities. Um, I know I grew up here, I got to walk to school. It's nice to be able to see your neighbors. And, as we talk about bringing contractors in as employees, like this all centers around community. And our school buildings are the places where that happens. And so I know that there's this constant struggle about what direction to take, but we've seen how that plays out and it does damage community when we consolidate schools. And so I just want to bring that up. And I think we've seen it play out, and I don't want it to get overlooked. Thank you.
Yes. Board Member Noble.
I feel like when we talk about EJ, I need to call out to Betty Graham, who was my science teacher for 5th and 6th grade at EJ. And she was wonderful, and she changed my life. I wrote my first book about her. Not that I've actually written any other books or ever been published, but I did write a book about Betty Graham. And eh, she pushed us to observe things. And so there might be an object like a pen, and you start observing it, and it's black and it's got silver and it's got a little thing at the top. And the exercise was always you got to a point where you think, I've observed this completely. And the lesson was always that you can push through that initial blockage and observe more and see more. And when you look hard enough, there's always more to see. And um, I'm very appreciative, Superintendent and Ms. Yonta Wagner, for all the work and the CRC, I should say, and thoughtfulness that has gone into this, because I feel like um, we're seeing more of what's possible. It's not just about a super expensive roof and infrastructure that clearly needs to be dealt with, because it is absolutely a health and safety issue, and that is what we can't compromise on ever. And so we do have to, I think, give some good direction tonight. And um, I really appreciate that there is an option that looks, you know, substantially similar in many of its stats to a very expensive roof. It's a little longer and a little more expensive. Um, and it's hard because, as you very aptly put it, President Anderson, we do have this issue of declining enrollment and a declining birth rate. We have been working very diligently in the reimagining process to think through how we can bring more value to our community in our education system, make sure that every student can really find the community that Board Member Bose represents, because community really matters, and schools are really about the community that students and families plug into. I guess I would say, in my time on the board, where we have talked very boldly a number of times about closing EJ, that what I have seen is that this community does not want that. And this community continues to be generous with our general obligation bond funding. And I I think that um, it's it's a very tough decision what we have to do here. But I've been here a long time, and I have observed what the community, what the school, what the students, what the parents ask for. And they do ask for small schools, and they do ask for schools in their community. And EJ is very beloved by many of us. And um, the double edged sword, of course, of our bonding capacity going up is that our housing is much more expensive. Um, and, I think there's a lot of analysis to be done about birth rates and that sort of thing. But I can tell you that working in support for new parents, we have a very long waiting list, and there's a lot of babies being born right now. So, I mean, we'll see what the demographics say. Um, and I do want to hear, the superintendent mentioned that he would make a recommendation. So I really do want to hear that. But I feel very clear that we've been asked to prioritize option one or option two, and that given what we've seen from the community, what we know about small schools, what we know about how students feel about their schools, what we know about our bonding capacity, and the generosity of this community in approving our general obligation bonds, that option two does seem like the right path to me.
I agree. Dr. Gonzalez.
I I just want to say that at the faculty meeting, I sat across from a person who said, I will be so happy when we get new bathrooms because these ones stink.
Well, we don't want that. That's for sure. That wasn't in the presentation, but I really, um, yeah. I mean, I think this all makes sense. I think we also need to like figure out how we get more folks to live in the EJ zone with families. Like, the reason that enrollment is declining at EJ isn't because isn't a wonderful school. It's that portion of town is really expensive to live in. So if we can talk with the city about infill housing and, progressive zoning codes and how we're going to get folks into the districts where there are great schools, I think that also, deserves some thought as well. All right. Superintendent, did you have anything to add here?
No, and I guess I can make my recommendation when we get to board discussion and possible action, but I do want to really recognize the two leaders of those schools, and they're both in the audience today. Without great leaders, it would make these decisions even more difficult. But what we've seen over the past few years, and really within the past few weeks, show me that we have great leaders at both schools. They're going to make it work. Their faculties are excited about it and have been positive. So, I think going out to the school communities to speak with staff and to their parents was the right thing to do so they're not blindsided by presentations like this or reading it in the media. So want to thank you guys and your staff because you guys are wonderful.
Can we ask for the superintendent's recommendation now? It feels
Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why sort of pull the punch?
Absolutely. So again, as we heard tonight, due to the how, and first I do want to thank the team that took the time to go out to both school communities and sit there and listen and also talk and answer questions. So I want to thank you guys as well. But again, due to the health and safety of the building at EJ, plus you saw the projected costs of both options, and I mentioned the two great leaders, the resounding positive feedback that we received from both staffs at both schools. My recommendation is going to be for option 2, complete rebuild, and then move forward from there as far as direction to the CRC.
Thank you. Yes, Board Member Bose. Thank you, President Anderson. I just want to extend gratitude to the superintendent and the team for doing that important outreach, for having those communications in such a kind and thoughtful way. I really appreciate that. And the presentation and all the work that goes into that. Thank you. I'll second that and also thank the families and the staff at Chaparral and EJ for being so amenable and working in community and caring about one another. I think that's really important when we have our schools work together like that. Right. Should we move on to our action items? Moving to the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone wants to pull off or ask questions about? Yes, board member Noble.
That's really sweet that you keep doing that. I just want to note that our budget adjustment request number 15 is for more than $800,000 in initial budget bar to establish the 2023 legislative session state appropriated funding for universal free meals. And that's just very exciting to see. We had some good movement by the federal government during the pandemic to cut child poverty in half, mostly through child hunger, and a lot of that has been pulled back. But I really am proud of our state to see that we are funding universal free lunch.
Wonderful. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I was going to say with that, I'll go ahead.
I believe that Dr. Gonzalez was not at that study session, so I wonder if we should pull the minutes and do that separately.
That's
Is that right, idea. Dr. Gonzalez? When we sat down there and did finance, were you here? Okay. Sorry, I thought you were. She doesn't have purple hair, so it's harder to remember. No, that must be it. Okay. All right, wonderful. So is
there's a motion. Is there a motion on the?
I'll move approval
Okay.
of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed or otherwise? Okay. Thank you so much. We accepted the audit earlier this evening. Yeah. Did we mess something up by doing it that
No,
way?
'cause we
Okay.
moved.
All right. Oh, we asked to move it. That's right. Gosh, guys, I'm sorry. All right. And now we will
President
move.
Anderson,
Yes.
just to say also, there is flexibility in the agenda. It's not hard and fast, even if we don't change it at the beginning.
Okay.
We can't, and I'm sure our general counsel will correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't vote on anything that's not on the agenda, but we don't have to follow the rigid order.
Scoot it around.
In other words, we could have probably just pulled up item C under Roman numeral 9 a moment ago if we wanted to. But anyway, we'll just keep going.
Sorry. Next time we'll do that. I promise. Still learning. All right. So we'll move to action item C, nomination to NMSBA for Excellence in Student Achievement Award. Superintendent, do you or?
Yeah, just real quick. Once you guys approve this, what we'll do next is submit the names to the New Mexico School Boards Association, and then at an upcoming meeting, we will announce those award winners. Plus, we will present them with a plaque. So again, that will be something that we move forward. We keep those names confidential at this point until they are submitted to the New Mexico School Boards Association.
Ernie, yes. Board Member Noble.
I just wonder the timing on this. It looks as if they've already been submitted in our packet materials here.
Yeah, so we're going to submit them as soon as you guys accept.
Okay. I mean, it just looks like there's been an email sent here.
Right.
And I don't know what the deadline is. And I guess I'm not inclined to mess with this, but the list feels pretty unbalanced to me and not as representative of the district in years past. And I appreciate the work it takes to go in there, but I'm sure everybody on here is deserving. No question about that. But again, there's an unevenness in the subject and the schools represented and some other things that I guess my request here is that we return to what we've had in previous years where there is a little bit of vetting by the full board because like I say, I don't want to take away from anyone here and what they've done, but I'm pretty uncomfortable with the lack of representation on the list that I see.
Yeah, it is. There is an unbalance and imbalance, and maybe it makes sense for us to think about. I don't know if it makes sense for us to think about for next year or if it's something we talk about for this year, which is that we need to have a process that is robust and ensures that we have representation from all over the district and not from one particular area necessarily. And if that needs to be something we set forth before the two board members look over it, or if it's something we need to set forth with the superintendent, I don't know how we do that to make sure that the list that we get is representative.
And we can, go back to what we've done in years past. And I don't know why I just, I did ask, I think I sent an email about this, but ultimately, we have had a multi-step process. And this year, I think because there's been so many other things going on, we abbreviated it. But we can just look at the process that we've done in years past as well.
Okay. President Anderson?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention without discussing any of the names on the list that I was pretty surprised that there weren't nominations coming from the full board. And I asked that reminders be sent out multiple times, and that didn't change by the deadline. So Dr. Gonzalez and I worked with what we had. I am also surprised to see that there was a team that I had nominated that now they've been broken out into individual names. So I think without giving, again, the names, it was a team of 6 that was nominated, and now they're listed as individuals, and that wasn't my intention because it was how the team worked. So
Okay, I
I
appreciate that.
brought 2 nominations to the list, and I'm shocked to see that they're broken up into 7 different names now.
That's super helpful
So
to understand.
there's a little context there.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
But yes, I mean, we would have loved to have
lots of names.
broader nominations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, I did make a mistake on the consent calendar. I was not here. I was in Mexico on February 22nd.
That's why you forgot. Well, we'll finish up with item C, and then we can go back and pull out the minutes and have another vote on the minutes. All right. Is there action that we want to take on item C? Yeah.
I mean, again, the timing is a question. When are these actually due to NMSBA?
Tomorrow, we can always,
And so maybe because I think Board Member Bose has identified part of the unevenness that we have some that are groups and then some that are broken out. So maybe we can go back to the group as suggested, and go from there.
Yeah.
And work to have a process that's a little more something next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm available tomorrow. If staff needs some additional feedback, I can also be available for that.
And I think maybe extending the process when we talk about it, like extending it away from necessarily just the board, but also to the community, like to the schools. And maybe you do that already, superintendent, but making sure that folks know that this is an option and that they can nominate people that they've worked with, because those are the folks who are really on the ground who know. We know about some folks, especially people who come in front of us, but the folks on the ground are really the ones who know who's doing the work. All right. Is there a motion?
I think we just move
Oh, do you want me to tell you what the motion should be, or no, or?
No, I'm happy to make the motion. I just wasn't sure if the board was saying that we should do something different.
I don't think we have time to do something different.
Okay. But it sounds like I should check in with staff tomorrow and regroup these as they were originally submitted.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Then I will make a motion to nominate these folks to the NMSBA for Excellence in Student Achievement Award.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, so we'll head back to our consent agenda, and I guess rescind our vote on the minutes and vote again on the
now that
minutes.
we're getting pedantic, can we do that?
I don't know. How do we? Is that what we do?
Rescind a vote? Also, I just want to say I'm pretty sure this is best practices. It's not a hard and fast rule.
Okay, we're not violating the law.
You're correct. That's what legal counsel and I were discussing.
Okay.
So it's just best practice.
And we used to have people vote on minutes that were taken from meetings they didn't attend all the time.
Okay.
Again, we ended up establishing as a best practice, not a hard and fast rule.
So in that case, do we want to not go back and do of Robert's Rules of Order that I just made up, rescinding our vote? Okay, why don't we just move on and we'll make sure next time.
And if I may say, the most important thing is maybe that it's been disclosed now.
Yes.
And the transparency is there that a mistake was made. But,
yeah. Okay. Sounds great. All right, so we'll move to board discussion and possible action. So the first thing we talked about to talk about at this meeting at the finance study session was to talk about board priorities for the budget at the session. It is 7:45. I don't know how much folks have thought about the board priorities. I do think it's important to talk about what we can tonight. So I don't know if there's anything that anyone wants to bring up as far as board priorities for the budget goes before the team goes into the spring budget workshop. Yes, Board Member Noble.
So I guess I would request if it's possible for us to figure out another time to talk about this and maybe look at or at least be emailed ahead of time some of the things that we had from the last study session, and those included what we talked about was and I believe we had at the study session the notes from the retreat. We also talked about figuring out a way of what was discussed, which did involve some prioritization during the superintendent's evaluation, and how we might, I think we talked about how we might bring that forward, and ultimately superintendent, I think it's depended on your comfort level. And I don't know what else we said. I mean, I could review the minutes from that study session, but I felt much closer to identifying board priorities at that time with those materials. The thing that I think keeps coming up is, and we even talked maybe about wordsmithing it, but sort of social emotional wellness, mental wellness, how we take care of particularly students' well-being,
Robust and meaningful.
in a robust and meaningful way. So, and
Mental health.
And I
support.
think, yes, we even talked about if there might be any guidance from the superintendent and his team, the wellness team, on that. So I'm not sure it's as important ahead of the spring budget workshop, but I do think that if we can do a little digging in and have some more material, because I can't get it out of the, there's too much in the brain. The vault is not.
I agree, and I'll send the entire board maybe a summary of what we've discussed the last two study sessions, what we're looking at, even some opinions from our departments, right? Like we said, student wellness and Sue O'Brien, and just on that note, that contract we have with Care Solis has been providing some assistance to our staff, our students, and our community. So they are accessing those services.
That's great. Would you feel comfortable pulling out that information from the evaluation, like what you would feel comfortable disclosing, since it's yours? Great. And then talking to the wellness committee about, or not wellness, the wellness department. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we will look forward to that, and then I think we can look at that information and then be prepared to talk about it at the next meeting. Okay, great. We'll move to item B, direction to the audit committee regarding, so this is regarding any actions that we might want to suggest, or just any direction we might want to give, particularly about the audit findings, to the audit committee. Yes, Board Member Noble. I'm sorry, I started digging into my audit findings.
So this is one I might also suggest we push on a little bit. I have asked to attend the spring budget workshop to hear the guidance from the state auditor as part of that, and in my role as chair of the audit committee. Having said that, given that the audit is fresh tonight, I'm also happy, if that feels right, to take action on this. My preference is to, and President Anderson, you, of course, are my co-board member on the audit committee, so I would love if there's a piece, and given that you said you read 170 pages of it, which I think is admirable.
Understand
Well, nobody's supposed to understand all of the audit except maybe auditors, and Mr. Martinez, the deep finance professionals. But ultimately, I guess I'm keep coming back to what is on page 130, and this is where I think that if we and this is in the schedule of findings and questioned cost document that we have from earlier, where the budgetary conditions, and that may be what the board direction. I mean, just to say, this is what I'm thinking, that the board direction to the audit committee could be a sort of to look at a quarterly review of the budgetary conditions, and where we have expenditures. It's basically a budget to actuals exercise quarterly. Um, and that the audit committee might work with the auditors in the finance department on this particular one, because I do think this is one of the big ones that we could use the audit committee's help in understanding. So I don't know, you know, board president, if you have thoughts, superintendent, or if you want to ask Mr. Martinez's thoughts on that. But.
Yeah, can I ask Mr. Martinez? Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, that audit finding, just so it gives you a little bit deeper knowledge, the fund has budget, but the functions do not. So what that is tied to is just budget maintenance, doing cleanup bars to move money from the in between the fund, between the functions. So a lot of our cleanup happens around the end of the fiscal year, into June, and sometimes whenever federal grants are not able to include certain expenditures in the RFRs, which are the requests for reimbursements to the PED, they move them over to operational fund. Operational is the only fund that you can borrow from or that you can take from. So it throws the function out of budget. It does not throw the fund out of budget. It throws the function out of budget. So capital outlay only has one function. So the money all resides in that function. So those are not issues that we see in those types of funds. But in the funds that you do see in the audit finding, those are ones that require budget maintenance often. The superintendent and I have talked about potential resolutions to that audit finding, but that's what the extent of the finding really is. The fund is not negative, it's the function within the fund that is negative.
Sorry, so could that be fixed with an update to the bar policy, or what are some of the fixes that you all have talked about?
President Anderson, I do believe that it could be a fix with the bar policy, allowing us to do budget maintenance daily. A lot of the time that when we do budget maintenance in June or at the end of the fiscal year in June, we've already passed our deadline for board meetings to have bars come to the board. So allowing us to do budget maintenance, moving money within the fund on a daily basis, I believe would help clean up that audit finding.
And to that point, if I can add, I'll give a good example. We're March 14th, and our next meeting will not be till second week of April. So that time frame, and Mr. Martinez and I have talked about it. We had one pass that up, and maybe the audit looking at that policy and giving some feedback on it before we ever bring it back forward.
And we also do have deadlines to encumber that the sites and the departments within the district follow, which is coming up now in April. So some sites may have uncommitted budget balances that they may want to move to use, but with the next board meeting not being until April, they may not be able to move the funds and use them. They may be swept, just because it does take some time to move the funds.
President Anderson? Yes. Thank you. I was just curious, is this a finding that's fairly common in other districts, and/or what have other districts done to address this issue?
Board Member Bose, I did talk to several other school districts at the NMASBO Winter Conference. APS and Gallup were the districts that I did talk to, and also gosh, I'm not even gonna be able to think of it now, but I did ask them about what they're doing with their bars. APS was doing their bars like we were, but Gallup had the blanket approval. And the district did have this finding years ago. It did go away, and then it did come back. So right now, a lot of the districts have blanket approval for that. Some don't. It just is the direction of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Noble, as the chair of the audit committee, question, is it messy if we give direction to the audit committee now to begin to give thought to an updated bar policy, and then if we come back after the budget workshop and address the other findings and give further direction to the audit committee, would you prefer to give it all at once, or does it make sense, since we know something now needs to be fixed, to do that now?
Well, just looking at the schedule, I don't think it matters, given that we have a board meeting on the 11th and the next audit committee at the 18th. So we can just, we can hold, and as long as we do it on the 11th. But I think what you just said, President Anderson, is sort of exactly right. And then, it doesn't have to be on the schedule that I said or
Okay.
anything like that, but we can just ask the audit committee to look into this. And I think that would help in vetting some of this and how it should work and how we can clear this piece. But I think it's also worth waiting to see if there's any other glaring anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'll just make sure to work with the superintendent and ensure that's on the agenda for the 11th.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So now we can move to item C, which we've already discussed extensively. So I don't know if there's further discussion or if there's a motion. Yes.
I move that we go ahead and ask the community review committee to look at the two options, but specifically number 2.
I think we want to ask them to prioritize the second option on the facilities master plan.
Okay.
Do you want
so
moved?
Yeah, so moved.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Excellent. We will move. Anything else on board discussion and possible action? Okay, we'll move to advanced planning. So we have a CRC committee meeting coming up with new direction. Excellent. We did want to note that April 6th through 8th, the board, with the exception of Vice President Abeta, will be at the National School Board Association Conference, which, according to board member Bose and the superintendent, was extremely valuable last year. So I really look forward to having more of the board and some staff as well. Excellent, at the National School Board Association Conference.
And may I add, we actually have 2 sessions. Santa Fe Public Schools will be presenting.
Oh,
at this
wonderful.
conference, so.
What are we presenting on?
It's
Sorry.
a long day. Investment in staff, and the second was innovation.
Excellent. I'm excited to hear that. All right, and then we'll have our next regular meeting on the 11th. We've already got a couple of items on the agenda for that. Anything else anyone wants to bring up on advanced planning?
No, I just want to remind the board that a lot of our staff members will be at the spring budget workshop Wednesday through Friday of next week. Our approach, again, is slightly different than in years past, and I invite the entire team, especially those that oversee budget within their department, to attend.
Thank you. Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to all the staff and the superintendent and our school staff who came. This has been I feel like a very big week in the district. You all have done a lot of hard work over the last few days, and I just want to note that we see you and we appreciate you. And with that, we can all go home. The meeting is adjourned.